Welcome, curious minds, to another deep dive. Today, we're plunging headfirst into a force that, whether you fully realize it or not, is constantly sculpting your reality.
It really is.
Just pause for a moment and consider, how many times have you checked your phone since you woke up?
Probably more than we think.
Exactly. How much time have you spent scrolling, clicking, or simply existing online? For most of us, digital media isn't just a tool we pick up and put down. It's become this immersive, omnipresent environment.
Right. It profoundly influences nearly every aspect of our daily lives, doesn't it?
Mhm.
From work to relationships to, well, even how we think.
Our mission today is to unpack the very latest in neuroscience research, exploring the possible effects of this widespread digital media use on the human brain,
Yeah.
on our cognition, and even on our behavior. We're going to try and extract the most important, often surprising insights from a whole collection of recent scientific papers and cutting-edge research.
Giving you that essential shortcut, basically.
Right, a shortcut to being truly well-informed. We'll look at the
Ta-da.
good, the bad, and the frankly fascinating ways our digital lives are subtly, and sometimes not so subtly, reshaping our minds.
That's a perfect framing for today's exploration. And the insights we're drawing upon offer a deeply multifaceted view of this ongoing digital revolution.
Yeah.
It's absolutely crucial to remember that while there are significant, well-researched concerns about intensive digital media use, there are also remarkable positive aspects and potential benefits.
That's key, isn't it? The balance.
Definitely.
Yeah.
What becomes clear from the research is that the key often lies not in the mere presence or existence of these technologies, but in what we actually use them for.
Right.
And how often and how we engage with them.
Yeah.
It really is about understanding those nuances, rather than just labeling digital tools as inherently good or bad.
That nuance is going to be central to our discussion today. And when we talk about the sheer scale of this digital landscape, the numbers are truly astonishing.
You really are.
Think about this. As of late 2019, nearly 4.57 billion people worldwide had internet access. That's more than half the planet.
Wow. Billions.
And the adoption rates are incredible. In the UK alone, a staggering 95% of 16 to 24-year-olds own a smartphone.
95%.
And they're checking it, on average, every 12 minutes.
Every 12 minutes. That's almost constant.
It's almost a constant subconscious interaction, right? Estimates suggest that about 20% of all adults are online for over 40 hours per week.
That's basically a full-time job.
Yeah, just being plugged into the digital world.
It's not just the numbers that are remarkable. It's the velocity of this transformation. If we connect this to the bigger picture, the speed of this change is truly unprecedented in human history.
Unprecedented? How so?
Well, we've witnessed an exponential increase in global internet access and smartphone adoption in just the last decade, far outpacing the rollout of any previous foundational technology like, say, electricity or the printing press.
Right, those took much longer.
Much longer. This makes digital media the most widespread and rapidly adopted technology in human history. And this pace, it forces us to ask a profound question. How quickly can our brains, our very minds, adapt to such a swift and profound environmental shift? And at what potential cost, or perhaps benefit? Our biology simply hasn't evolved at this speed before.
It really does make you pause and wonder about that evolutionary timescale. And what's really striking is how some of these contemporary concerns echo from more than a century ago.
Oh, you mean Forster?
Exactly. Back in 1909, the visionary author E.M. Forster penned a short story titled The Machine Stops.
Such a chilling story.
Isn't it? In this chillingly prescient dystopian vision, humanity lives underground, entirely dependent on a mysterious, all-encompassing machine.
A machine.
That controls every aspect of their existence, from providing food and shelter to dictating communication and knowledge. All human interaction becomes remote. Face-to-face meetings are considered like an oddity, even a bit repulsive.
Yeah, they barely leave their rooms.
Society becomes utterly reliant on this singular, omnipotent system. And of course, when the machine inevitably begins to fail, society just collapses into chaos and despair.
What's truly remarkable here is how Forster's fictional scenario, written, before even television, let alone the internet,
Way before.
so remarkably evokes aspects of today's digital media landscape. It serves as this powerful early warning, raising timeless questions about our dependence on technology.
Definitely.
And the profound impact such reliance can have on our brains,
Right.
our fundamental human interactions, and even our capacity for independent thought and survival. It prompts us to consider, are we, in some ways, creating our own version of the machine and becoming similarly reliant perhaps without fully grasping the long-term consequences.
That story really does make you wonder if we're heading down a similar path. And these aren't just abstract literary concerns anymore, are they?
No, not at all.
We're seeing a palpable and growing unease translating into official warnings and policy changes from major organizations and governments.
Like the WHO.
Take the World Health Organization, exactly. In 2019, they published strict guidelines about children's screen time, emphasizing the potential developmental risks for very young children.
Right, especially the under twos.
And here in California, where we are, Assembly Bill 272 was announced, which permits public elementary and secondary schools to restrict or even ban smartphone usage during school hours.
That's a significant step.
These aren't trivial actions. They are direct responses to mounting research and widespread concerns among parents, educators, public health officials about the societal and individual impacts.
Precisely. And this growing concern is backed by initial observations and studies from researchers that have started to link intensive digital media use to various cognitive and mental health issues.
Like what specifically?
Well, one consistent finding we see is a correlation with reduced working memory capacity.
Working memory. Remind us what that is again.
It's like your brain's temporary scratch pad. It's where you hold and manipulate information actively for a short period, essential for tasks like solving problems, following instructions, or even just, holding a conversation.
Got it.
Wow.
So digital media use reduces that capacity.
It seems to correlate with it, yeah. Interestingly, studies have even shown that simply seeing a smartphone, even when it's not being used, just sitting there on a desk.
Just seeing it.
Yeah, it can lower working memory capacity and decrease performance on cognitive tasks.
Wow. Why?
Well, the thinking is it isn't just about active distraction. It's because a portion of our cognitive resources are constantly busy trying to inhibit the urge to check the phone, or simply being aware of its potential for interruption. It's a subtle but persistent drain on our mental energy.
That's wild, isn't it? Just having it in sight is enough of a distraction to sap some of your mental bandwidth?
It appears so.
Beyond working memory, there are clear links emerging to broader psychological problems, right?
Yes, ranging from increased rates of depression and anxiety, particularly among adolescents, to significant disruptions in sleep patterns and overall sleep quality.
And here's where it gets really interesting, especially for those of us who still love the feel, maybe the smell of a physical book.
Oh, yeah, me too.
Research has shown surprising and consistent findings regarding text comprehension. Studies demonstrate that reading complex texts on paper leads to better recall of stories, specific details, and crucially, the connections between facts and ideas.
Compared to screen reading.
Compared to reading the exact same text on a screen.
That prompts a fascinating question. Why would the format matter if the words are identical?
Exactly what's going on there.
The reasons appear to be deeply linked to the sensory and spatial cues that paper books inherently provide. Think about it. The physical location of text on a page.
Right, like top left, bottom right?
The tactile feedback of turning a page. The weight of the book in your hands as you progress. Maybe even the distinct smell of new paper or old books. These seemingly small, almost subliminal details create a kind of mental map of the content. This physical engagement can significantly boost recall and deeper comprehension.
So our bodies are helping our brains remember.
In a way, yes. Additionally, language scientists like Naomi Barron have highlighted that digital environments, with their constant notifications, embedded hyperlinks, endless scrolling, they cultivate different reading habits.
Yeah, I definitely scan more online.
We tend to glance, scan, keyword spot, multitask, which may inherently encourage a more superficial engagement with text.
Makes sense.
And as a consequence, reduce our sustained attention and capacity for deep reading. So the key takeaway here is that for truly deep learning, for absorbing complex narratives and forming lasting memories of what you read, paper still seems to reign supreme.
Interesting.
It's not just about getting the words in front of your eyes. It's about the physical engagement that primes your brain for deeper retention. If you're tackling something truly important or complex, a physical book or printout might just be your best brain hack.
That's exactly the critical nuance we need to keep emphasizing throughout this deep dive. Digital media itself isn't inherently good or bad. It's a tool, or rather, a vast ecosystem of tools.
Right.
The crucial element we must analyze is what we use our smartphones or other digital media for, and, perhaps even more importantly, how often and how deeply we engage with them.
Exactly. This is a point that is often overlooked in broader discussions, where we tend to paint with too broad a brush, missing the subtle but significant distinctions in usage patterns
Yeah.
that can lead to vastly different outcomes for our brains and minds.
So with that crucial nuance in mind, let's unpack the incredible concept of brain plasticity.
Neuroplasticity, yes.
This is the brain's remarkable, lifelong ability to change its functional and structural connectivity in response to usage, learning, new habits, all sorts of experiences.
It's essentially the ultimate use it or lose it principle, but also a use it and reshape it one. Our brains are not static organs. They are dynamic, constantly adapting.
And these changes can be really tangible, right?
It's truly remarkable how tangible and specific these changes can be. Consider, for example, string instrument players.
Like violinists.
Exactly. Through years of repetitive, highly skilled movements, they developed an increased number of cortical neurons, the brain cells responsible for processing information specifically dedicated to their playing fingers. Their brain literally expands the representation for those digits.
Wow.
Or think about London taxi drivers, famous for memorizing the labyrinthine streets of the city to pass the knowledge test.
Oh, yeah, that test is legendary.
Studies using brain imaging have shown that these drivers actually develop larger hippocampi, a crucial brain region involved in spatial memory and navigation.
So their brains physically grew in that area.
The hippocampus, yeah. These examples clearly illustrate how our brain literally reshapes itself, building stronger, more efficient neural pathways in response to intense, sustained activity and learning.
And this incredible principle of neuroplasticity applies directly and powerfully to our intensive digital media use.
Absolutely. There are direct, measurable physical changes occurring in our brains from this constant interaction.
Okay, give us an example.
Let's look at a fascinating study by Gindret and colleagues who used EEG, that's electroencephalography, measuring brainwaves
Right.
on touchscreen users. They found that repetitive use of touchscreens, particularly with the thumb,
Like texting and scrolling.
precisely, it leads to an increase in what they call cortical potentials. Essentially, this means a boost in the electrical activity in the brain regions responsible for processing touch and movement in those specific fingertips.
So the brain's paying more attention to the thumbs.
It's like your brain is building new, stronger neural pathways, literally remapping itself based on constant touchscreen contact. What's even more remarkable is that these changes can occur within a matter of days.
Oh, days. That fast.
And are directly correlated with the intensity of use. So the more you swipe and tap, the more your brain reorganizes itself around those actions.
This leads us to a critical and somewhat unsettling question, doesn't it?
It does. Does this expansion of cortical representation in the fingertips occur at the expense of other motor coordination skills?
Is it a trade-off?
Research suggests this is a very real possibility. We see general motor skills inversely correlated with screen time, meaning the more screen time, the less developed certain motor skills tend to be.
Why would that be?
Well, it could be due to a form of competition for cortical space, meaning the brain, being a finite resource, might reallocate neural real estate, prioritizing the frequently used digits over others.
Okay.
Alternatively, it could simply be a general lack of physical exercise resulting from increasingly sedentary, screen-based activities.
Or maybe both?
Could be both. It's almost like a zero-sum game for some of that precious neural real estate, where prioritizing one area means potentially deprioritizing another.
The impact on the developing brain is particularly critical as it's so much more plastic and vulnerable.
Right, absolutely. A study by Gomez and colleagues used fMRI functional magnetic resonance imaging looking at blood flow to look at adults who played Pokemon intensely as children. What they found was quite unique. These adults showed distinct, long-lasting cortical responsiveness to Pokemon figures.
To the actual characters.
Yes, in the ventral temporal lobe, an area of the brain located near regions crucial for face recognition. The brain had literally carved out a dedicated space for these animated characters.
Wow. So what does that imply?
Well, this brings up a really intriguing point. Is this simply amazing brain plasticity, where the brain is just adding new representations for novel classes of objects, essentially expanding its capacity? Or does it have negative consequences for more foundational critical functions like face recognition due to competition for cortical space? If the brain is dedicating significant resources to identifying Pikachu.
Is it doing so at the subtle expense of recognizing human faces or interpreting complex social cues?
That's the question. There are also studies that report a correlation between time spent with digital media and lower cognitive empathy in young adults, meaning a reduced ability to understand and share the feelings of others.
Lower empathy, that's concerning.
It is. However, it's important to note that some studies dispute this direct causal link, so the precise relationship between screen time and empathy is still under ongoing investigation, but it certainly raises an important flag.
That's a big one to consider, especially with the rise of increasingly remote interactions. And it gets even more alarming when we look at language development and the structural integrity of white matter in preschoolers.
Ah, yes, the white matter tracks.
Remind us what white matter is.
It's like the brain's high-speed wiring bundles of myelinated nerve fibers that transmit signals between different brain regions.
Got it, the communication network.
Exactly. Diffusion tensor MRI, or DTI studies, like those by Hutton and colleagues, have shown a clear correlation between intensive early childhood digital media use and poorer microstructural integrity of these white matter tracks.
Poorer integrity, what does that mean practically?
Think of it like the insulation on the wires being less effective, or the pathways being less organized. This is particularly concerning because these tracks are absolutely crucial for language processing,
Okay.
especially those connecting the Broca and Wernicke areas, which are fundamental for language production and comprehension.
So the brain's language superhighways might be developing with fewer lanes or more potholes.
That's a good analogy. Indeed, these findings are quite stark. And these microstructural issues are coupled with observable cognitive deficits.
Like what?
Children with higher screen time in these studies show lower executive functions, which include skills like impulse control, working memory, and cognitive flexibility, and reduced literacy abilities.
And this isn't just about income or age.
No, this holds true even when controlling for factors like age and household income, suggesting a direct link to digital media exposure. Reading ability, as we know, is one of the strongest predictors of school success and overall cognitive development. This highlights the urgent need for further long-term study on how early screen time compares to traditional reading in books for foundational brain development, and what the lasting consequences might be for a generation growing up immersed in digital interactions.
It truly raises a significant question about the fundamental building blocks of learning and cognitive development.
And it's not just what kids are reading, but how they're consuming stories.
The format matters too.
The same Hutton research team conducted an fMRI study on children listening to stories in different formats: purely audio, illustrated books, or animated videos.
Okay, what did they find?
They found that illustrated books provided what they termed efficient scaffolding for language.
Scaffolding, like support.
Exactly, meaning the visual cues from the illustrations help to decrease the cognitive strain on the language network, making it easier for the brain to process and understand the narrative.
Makes sense. What about animation?
Animation. That seemed to bias the brain towards visual perception at the expense of network integration, potentially disrupting the natural deep processing of language and threatening the development of deep reading skills, which are crucial for reasoning, critical analysis, and reflection.
Wow. So the very format could hinder deeper understanding.
This really suggests that the format of the content matters immensely for how our brains engage with and learn from it.
It absolutely does. And adolescence, as you know, is a particularly vulnerable and critical period for emotional and social brain development, a time of profound reorganization.
Yeah, big changes happening then.
Studies show that intensive social media use correlates with measurable changes in the gray matter volume of the amygdala,
The emotion center.
a key brain region deeply involved in processing emotions, particularly fear and reward. This suggests a direct interplay between constant online social experiences and the physical development of the adolescent brain itself.
So teenagers are already navigating incredibly complex social and emotional landscapes.
Right.
And social media might amplify that vulnerability in significant ways. They could be more susceptible to the spread of fake news, develop unrealistic self-expectations based on curated online personas,
The highlight reel effect.
or struggle with emotion regulation due to the constant feedback loop of likes and comments. This raises a profound question. Are the extensive online social networks of today shaping the adolescent brain differently than the direct, in-person social interactions that characterize previous generations?
Are there long-term implications for how they form empathy, build genuine connections, or process complex social cues?
We really need much more longitudinal data studies that follow individuals over many years to understand the full scope of these long-term effects.
On a slightly more well-defined front, we also have robust evidence regarding violent games, don't we?
We do. A comprehensive meta-analysis, which combines results from multiple studies, clearly shows that exposure to violent video games is a highly significant risk factor for increased aggressive behavior. And for a measurable decrease in empathy and lower levels of pro-social behavior, that's behavior intended to help others.
And that's pretty consistent across studies.
This isn't a fleeting effect. It's a consistently observed pattern across numerous studies, indicating a more direct and concerning impact in this specific area of digital media use.
Okay. Moving on from the physical structural changes in the brain, let's now turn our attention to the more immediate cognitive repercussions of our internet and social media use, starting with perhaps the most precious resource of all, attention itself.
Ah, yes, the attention economy.
It's probably no surprise to most listeners that extensive screen time and prolonged internet use are consistently associated with a reduced capacity for sustained attention. It's just harder to focus for long periods.
And what's particularly striking is the direct link that research has established between internet overuse and symptoms of attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, or ADHD.
A direct link to ADHD symptoms.
Studies show that a diagnosis of internet use disorder can triple the likelihood of developing ADHD symptoms, affecting children, teenagers, and adults alike.
Wow, triple.
From a neural perspective, media multitasking that's constantly switching between tasks like checking emails while watching a video or texting while studying, and intensive internet use are associated with reduced gray matter volume in prefrontal regions of the brain.
The areas for focus and control.
Exactly. These areas are critical for executive functions, including attention control, impulse inhibition, and the ability to ignore distractors. This suggests that the brain might actually be working harder, showing increased prefrontal activity,
Working harder.
just to maintain even a baseline level of focus in an increasingly distracting digital environment. It's like trying to run in quicksand.
So it's not just that we feel distracted. Our brains are actually being reshaped in ways that make us more easily distracted and less able to sustain deep focus.
That seems to be the implication.
And these effects aren't just chronic, building up over time. They can be acute and immediate, too.
Yes. Even brief interactions with hyperlinks, like when you're just clicking around online, can immediately reduce concentration.
Just clicking a link.
And those deficits can persist even after you've gone offline. It's like a cognitive hangover.
A cognitive hangover. I like that.
Building on that, if we connect this individual level impact to the bigger picture, some researchers propose that this translates into a shortening of the collective attention span at a population level.
The whole society's attention span.
We can observe this phenomenon in the dynamics of tweet popularity, for example.
Oh.
Topics gain popularity much steeper, indicating a rapid surge of interest.
Yeah, things blow up fast.
But then they also reach saturation and lose attention much more quickly than in previous pre-digital eras. This raises an important question. How do these individual changes in attention span translate into broader societal cognitive shifts?
Influencing everything from political discourse to our capacity for collective problem solving.
Exactly. Are we becoming a society less capable of sustained, deep engagement with complex issues?
Of course, it's not all doom and gloom, right? There's always a flip side.
Right, and it's essential to acknowledge it. Certain specific uses of digital media, like playing particular types of video games, can actually be highly beneficial.
So.
They have been shown to improve visual attention, spatial reasoning, and reaction time, acting almost as a form of targeted training for these specific cognitive capacities.
So the key, as always, is in the details of how we engage and what we engage with.
Precisely.
Now let's talk about memory, which is another area profoundly impacted. The internet is rapidly becoming an external hard drive for our collective and individual memories.
The external brain.
We're witnessing what researchers call the Google effect, where the internet acts as an external or transactive memory storage system.
Okay, what does that mean?
Instead of internalizing and remembering the information itself, the facts, the dates, the specific details, users increasingly learn to remember where to access that information.
Not the what, but the where.
Whether it's a specific search engine, a favorite website, or even a particular app.
What's remarkable here is that this shift has measurable neural consequences. It leads to reduced recruitment of brain regions traditionally associated with working memory and internal memory retrieval.
So our brain isn't working as hard to remember stuff.
When you know you can instantly Google something, your brain doesn't need to work as hard to encode and retrieve those facts from its own internal databases. Studies using neuroimaging show that internet searching actually changes brain activity, resulting in decreased homogeneity or consistency in the middle temporal gyrus and reduced functional connectivity between the temporal gyrus and the parahippocampal cortex. These are brain areas crucial for memory encoding and retrieval, particularly for episodic memory.
Our memory for events and experiences.
It's like our brain's internal library is relying more on an external index than its own shelves.
This prompts a very important question, though. Is this offloading of memory always a bad thing?
That's the date, isn't it?
Humans have actually been using external tools for memory for millennia. Think about cave paintings as early forms of external memory, or calendars, shopping lists.
Or even just writing things down.
Right. This cognitive offloading can actually be incredibly efficient. It frees up our internal cognitive resources, allowing our brains to focus on other, perhaps more complex tasks like creativity, problem solving, or critical thinking, rather than rote memorization.
That makes sense. Freeing up bandwidth.
In fact, some studies, like recent research by Kang and Malvaso in 2024, show a positive relationship between the frequency of internet use and episodic memory, especially for remembering how information was accessed.
Oh, interesting. So not a decline, but a shift.
Exactly. It might not be a decline in memory overall, but a different kind of memory function that's being enhanced, a shift from remembering what to remembering where and how.
That's a crucial distinction. And just as we saw with attention, certain digital tools and specific video games have been explicitly shown to improve various aspects of memory, particularly in older adults.
Really, like brain training games.
For example, specific brain training apps or strategy games can enhance working memory, processing speed, and even episodic memory in this demographic.
So it's not all decline.
No, this further suggests that while there are changes in how we utilize our memory systems in the digital age, there's also significant potential for targeted cognitive enhancement and preservation.
Let's pivot now to information processing, because this is where the internet has cultivated a profoundly different mode of engagement, often referred to as the shallow mode.
Shallow reading, yes.
This is characterized by a pervasive shift from deep linear reading to increased scanning, selective reading for keywords, and rapid nonlinear shifts in attention from one piece of information to another.
We've all done it, jumping between tabs.
Constantly. When you're constantly jumping between articles, videos, and social media feeds, you're reducing the time spent in contemplation, and consequently, you're often decreasing the actual retention of information.
If we delve deeper into this, features like hypertexts, while incredibly useful for quick access to new, related information, can also fragment our attention.
Every link is a potential exit ramp.
Exactly. Every hyperlink presents a choice, pulling us away from the current text. This can reduce the cognitive resources available for deeper, sustained processing of a single source. It can also lead to increased mind wandering and a reliance on mental shortcuts to cope with the sheer volume of information overload. The significant concern here is that this pervasive shallow mode reduces the need for elaborative processing.
What's elaborative processing?
That's the act of thinking, questioning, and connecting new information to existing knowledge. It disrupts the development of deep reading skills, vital for complex reasoning, critical analysis, and sustained reflection.
So we might be gaining speed but losing depth.
That's the worry.
So it's not just about reading faster. It's about reading less deeply, potentially impacting our capacity for truly understanding and synthesizing complex ideas. But is there an upside to this constant information navigation?
Well, some researchers suggest there's a potential gain in cognitive flexibility.
Flexibility, how?
Our brains are constantly adapting to the ever-growing and rapidly changing amounts of information, becoming more adept at navigating vast, complex, and often disconnected information landscapes.
Okay.
This could lead to a less linear, more rhizome style of thinking.
Rhizome, like a plant root system.
Exactly, connecting many disparate ideas and sources in novel ways, even if it's at a shallower individual depth.
Interesting trade-off. Now let's talk about a phenomenon that keeps us glued to our screens. The digital dopamine hit.
The reward system.
The digital environment, from streaming music and captivating videos to immersive games and the constant notifications of social media, is inherently stimulating and pleasurable.
It expertly taps into our fundamental human needs, feeding our hunger for connectedness, our appetite for adventure, our desire for novelty.
Mimicking the gratification we seek in what we call real life.
What's particularly insightful is how these platforms deliver these rewards. The internet and social media platforms often distribute rewards on what's known as a variable ratio reinforcement schedule.
Variable ratio, like a slot machine.
Precisely. This is a powerful behavioral mechanism where rewards are delivered at unpredictable frequencies and magnitudes. You don't know when the next payout will come or how big it will be, but you know it could come.
And that uncertainty keeps you pulling the lever. or scrolling the feed.
Exactly. This unpredictable reward system powerfully engages the brain's mesolimbic reward system. That's our natural pleasure pathway fueled by dopamine and the amygdala hypothalamus circuit,
Especially in teenagers.
especially in adolescents who are particularly vulnerable to external social validation and emotional transformations.
And the consequences of this constant, unpredictable reward are significant, aren't they?
Yes, it leads to reinforced reward-pursuing behavior, increased impulsivity, and a pronounced preference for immediate gratification, even if that means potential long-term losses or negative consequences.
Just chasing the next hit.
This constant pursuit of the next hit can significantly alter our self-control and tragically increase the prevalence of addictive behaviors, such as social media addiction, which has skyrocketed, or internet gaming disorder.
And there are brain changes associated with that.
Neurologically, these addictive behaviors are linked to reduced frontostriatal functional connectivity, meaning the pathways between the brain's frontal lobe, responsible for executive control and decision-making, and the striatum, involved in reward and habit formation, are less efficient or active. It's harder for your thinking brain to rein in your reward-seeking brain.
That makes a lot of sense.
That's a crucial point, and it ties directly into the social reward mechanisms at play. Social media feedback, like the instant gratification of likes, comments, and shares, directly leverages our deep-seated human need for social validation and belonging.
It feels good to be liked online.
It does. And this isn't just about feeling good. Emerging research even suggests that brain network reconfiguration might literally underlie opinion formation, especially when influenced by social media.
Wait, our brains rewire based on online opinions.
It implies that our neural pathways might be literally reshaping based on the online opinions, trending topics, and social feedback we receive, making us more susceptible to groupthink or the adoption of certain viewpoints just because they're popular within our online echo chambers.
Wow, that's quite something. Finally, let's tackle the pervasive phenomenon of multitasking.
The great myth of multitasking.
The dramatic increase in media multitasking, whether performing simultaneous tasks like texting while watching TV or rapidly switching between multiple applications, places an enormous and often unsustainable demand on our neurocognitive networks.
Especially those involved in sustained attention and cognitive control. Our brains are simply not wired for this kind of constant rapid switching.
And what's consistently observed here is that the outcomes are largely negative, right?
Yes, this constant switching between tasks correlates with increased distractibility, higher error rates across tasks, poorer inhibition of irrelevant stimuli, and generally poorer executive control.
That whole suite of planning, focus, juggling skills.
Exactly. One particularly insightful and counterintuitive study by Ofer and colleagues found that heavy media multitaskers actually performed worse on cognitive control tasks.
Worse, not better with practice.
Contrary to the expectation that constant practice would improve performance. This suggests that instead of becoming more efficient multitaskers, their brains develop an increased reliance on automatic, exploratory, bottom-up processing.
Bottom up.
Meaning they're constantly scanning for new information and distractions rather than engaging in deliberate, focused, top-down processing. They're always searching for the next stimulus, making it harder to stay put on one.
So it seems that instead of getting better at multitasking, we're actually getting worse at focused attention, or at least our brains are adapting in a way that makes deep focus harder.
That appears to be the case, and there are clear neural correlates for this.
Like physical brain changes.
Studies link heavy media multitasking to decreased gray matter densities in the anterior cingulate cortex, or ACC.
A key area for control and decision-making.
Right. There's also altered connectivity between the ACC and the precuneus, another area involved in self-awareness and memory. These physical changes in brain structure and connectivity serve as a neural signature for the observed cognitive control deficits.
Okay, so mostly downsides to heavy multitasking. Is there any potential upside?
However, if we connect this to the bigger picture, there might be a fascinating silver lining, or at least a different kind of adaptation. While heavy media multitasking is associated with poor inhibition of distractors, it's also linked to better integration of multiple disparate sources of information.
Better integration. How?
This might lead to that less linear, more rhizome style of thinking we mentioned earlier.
Connecting lots of different ideas.
Yes, connecting many ideas across different domains in a highly interconnected, non-hierarchical way. This prompts an intriguing question. Are we sacrificing depth of focus for a broader, more interconnected, albeit potentially shallower understanding of the world?
And what are the long-term implications of such a fundamental shift in our thinking style? That's a truly profound thought, a shift in the very architecture of our thinking. And as if the digital landscape wasn't transforming us enough, we now have the galloping advances in artificial intelligence.
AI, the next big wave.
We're talking about AI automation seamlessly integrating across nearly all sectors of our lives, from biotech and fintech to education and entertainment. This isn't just about new tools we use.
No, it's much bigger.
It's about a technology so powerful that it has the potential to fundamentally reshape our very essence as human beings.
When we consider decision-making processes, AI algorithms offer immensely valuable suggestions and predictions, potentially augmenting human capabilities.
Like helping doctors diagnose or suggesting investments.
Exactly. And AI could analyze vast datasets to recommend the optimal chess move, a profitable stock trade, or even a personalized learning path. However, there's a growing concern that an over-reliance on AI could reduce our individual cognitive effort
Making us lazy.
and increase what some studies, like Ahmad et al. In 2023, provocatively call cognitive laziness. If an AI can always give us the best answer, are we slowly losing our capacity to derive that answer independently, to critically analyze, to think deeply?
It raises a profound question about the balance between augmentation and diminished human input, doesn't it?
It really does.
And beyond mere laziness, there's a significant and troubling risk of AI institutionalizing misinformation.
Oh yeah, that's a big one.
And as a result, diminishing our critical thinking skills, our ability to independently evaluate information, and our capacity for independent thought. AI, especially when designed to maximize engagement.
Like social media algorithms.
Exactly. It can subtly reinforce existing human biases, creating echo chambers, and even induce new biases where initial decisions might have been unbiased. This ties into what B.J. Fogg termed captology.
Computers as persuasive technologies.
Right. Think of how a social media algorithm might show you more content similar to what you've already engaged with, subtly guiding your worldview and making it harder to encounter dissenting opinions. That's captology in action.
Shaping your behavior and, potentially, your critical faculties without you even realizing it.
What's truly unsettling here is the idea that as AI gets progressively smarter and more capable, humans might paradoxically become more predictable.
More predictable.
If algorithms can precisely maximize their objectives, whether it's keeping us engaged, making us buy something, or influencing our opinions by knowing exactly what content we'll select or what decisions we'll make, then better AI leads to more predictable humans.
That's disturbing.
Some researchers, including Ahmad et al., even argue that by increasingly performing analytical and complex problem-solving tasks for us, AI could make humans slowly less intelligent over generations.
Less intelligent. Because we're not using those skills.
Simply because we're not exercising those cognitive muscles as rigorously. This raises a critical ethical dilemma about human autonomy, the very nature of intelligence, and what we might be trading away in our pursuit of technological convenience.
That's a truly chilling thought, that we might be trading our fundamental intelligence for sheer convenience. And this influence extends beyond cognition, reaching into risk-taking behavior.
How does AI affect risk-taking?
Studies using tasks like the Balloon Analog Risk Task, or BART, where participants inflate a virtual balloon earning money but risking losing it all,
Right, I know that one.
show that avatars and robots can significantly influence our tendency to take risks, particularly in impressionable adolescents and young adults. Humans consistently tend to be more impulsive and take more risks when subtly incited or encouraged by virtual agents or AI prompts.
So the AI can egg us on.
It's as if the digital intermediary provides a layer of detachment, making us bolder.
Indeed. What's intriguing is that both informational conformity, where we align our behavior because we believe others have better information, and normative conformity, where we conform to be accepted by a group, can be induced by social robots, even in adults.
Robots can make us conform.
We see studies where people are more willing to take risks or conform to decisions when encouraged by a robot, even when they know it's just a machine. This raises important questions about AI's subtle yet powerful role in shaping human behavioral patterns and impulsivity within virtual environments.
Blurring the lines between human and artificial influence.
Interestingly, the research on gaming nuances shows that excessive internet gaming, without leading to full addiction, might even show enhanced inhibitory control and distinct neural activity patterns,
Enhanced control, that's counterintuitive.
such as shortened P3 latency, indicating faster processing of novel stimuli, and reduced theta-alpha band power, associated with focused attention. This suggests that not all gaming is uniformly detrimental. The specific type and context of play matter.
That's a really important nuance. And finally, there's the profound impact on moral distance and empathy.
Moral distance, what's that?
AI, by facilitating remote interactions and enabling opaque, often automated processes, what some scholars call bureaucratic distance, can significantly exacerbate moral distance.
Okay.
This is a psychological detachment from the human consequences of our decisions, making it easier to make what we might call colder decisions. It's reminiscent of the Milgram experiment.
Where people gave shocks when ordered.
Exactly. Where participants were willing to inflict what they believed were harmful electric shocks when distanced from the victims and operating under instruction. When AI mediates our interactions, that distance can become even greater, reducing our direct engagement with the human impact of our choices.
Building on that, if we connect this to the bigger picture, a diminishing emphasis on direct, face-to-face human interaction, increasingly supplanted by AI-mediated communication, could profoundly reduce our innate capacity for empathy.
Empathy needs those subtle cues, right?
Right. Empathy is a complex skill, nurtured through subtle cues, facial expressions, tone of voice, body language, that are often lost or distorted in digital interactions. This raises a fundamental and urgent question. Will this pervasive shift in our interaction patterns modify the very brain networks that underpin altruistic and emotional processes like empathy?
That's a huge question.
The rapid integration of AI isn't just reshaping our tools, it's influencing how we interact with each other, how we make ethical decisions, and potentially our very identity as social beings. This demands deep introspection and careful ethical navigation.
To ensure we don't inadvertently erode what makes us fundamentally human.
It's clear that the impact of digital technologies isn't a one-size-fits-all phenomenon. How our brains are digitalized and the effects of that digitalization vary significantly across individuals and across different populations.
Right, we're all experiencing this technological revolution, but not in the same way.
That's a critical point. There's no single universal response to digital technologies. Each individual's unique traits can profoundly alter the impact.
Like personality.
Yes, this includes a spectrum of personality traits, such as extroversion, conscientiousness, emotionality, and honesty, which can influence how prone someone is to digital addiction or how they process online social feedback.
Mhm.
It also includes existing disabilities, like reading difficulties or cognitive decline in older adults, or pre-existing mental health conditions, such as mood or anxiety disorders.
Which could be made worse, or maybe even helped.
Exactly. They can be either exacerbated or, in some cases, mitigated by digital interactions. These individual differences mean that different people will have vastly unequal digital experiences and capacities for adaptation.
And beyond individual traits, there's the pervasive and often invisible issue of the digital divide.
Access issues.
Cultural, environmental, and socioeconomic factors play a colossal role in shaping digital experiences. Consider access to high-speed internet, the affordability of necessary devices like smartphones or laptops, or even appropriate support systems for digital literacy and reskilling.
All these things create huge inequalities.
All these elements create significant inequalities in how people engage with and are affected by the digital world. This raises a profound question. Are we inadvertently creating new forms of social and cognitive inequality,
Widening existing societal gaps.
leaving vast populations behind in understanding and adapting to this rapidly evolving digital landscape, thus widening existing societal gaps?
Precisely. And this is compounded by a significant research gap, isn't it?
A huge one. There's a dramatic scarcity of studies from the global south compared to the global north.
So our understanding is biased.
Which means our understanding of these impacts is heavily skewed towards developed nations. This calls for much more nuanced contextual research that considers diverse cultural practices and socioeconomic realities. Ultimately, there's a pressing need for users to develop what we call digital autonomy.
Digital autonomy, meaning
That's a sophisticated understanding of how the digital world works, how algorithms function, and how information and power asymmetries can subtly or overtly affect us. It's about being a savvy digital citizen, not just a passive consumer.
that makes sense. We need to understand the system. And then there are the profound age differences. Digital technologies are being used across the entire human lifespan,
From babies to grandparents.
from infancy to older adulthood, shaping human development in strikingly different ways at each stage. For infants and toddlers under 2 years old, there's often automatic exposure to touchscreens,
From parents' phones, maybe?
both direct from their own hands and indirect from parents' devices. We currently have very limited knowledge about their actual content comprehension at this age, but we do have concerning data.
Like the TV studies.
Studies consistently show that extensive television viewing before age 2 is linked to altered language development and executive function development later on. The question is whether these touchscreens, which are even more interactive, present similar or greater risks.
Right. For older children, generally aged 2 to 11, intensive screen use can lead to deeply altered language networks, as shown by those DTI studies we discussed,
Affecting the brain's language wiring.
impacting the brain's fundamental wiring for language. This shift towards superficial engagement and away from linear reading may directly threaten the development of deep reading skills, which are crucial for complex comprehension and critical thinking.
And we're seeing disruptions elsewhere, too.
We're also seeing clear disruptions to problem-solving abilities, critical thinking capacity, and sleep patterns due to excessive screen time, which collectively prompted the WHO to publish those strict guidelines on children's screen time back in 2019.
It truly raises an important question. Are we compromising fundamental developmental pathways for the sake of early digital engagement with potentially long-lasting consequences?
It's a vital question. Adolescents, being more connected than any previous generation, are showing particularly significant alterations in social dynamics and overall well-being.
We touched on this, the amygdala changes.
Right. Intensive social media use correlates with measurable changes in the gray matter volume of the amygdala, impacting emotion processing and making them more susceptible to emotional swings. They're also more vulnerable to phenomena like cyberbullying, constant social comparison,
The pressure to conform online.
immense pressure to conform to online ideals, which can lead to higher risks of developing addictive behaviors, such as internet gambling disorder or smartphone addiction. These addictions can, in turn, significantly increase the propensity for developing or exacerbating mood or anxiety disorders.
Creating a vicious cycle.
A vicious cycle that impacts mental health.
What's quite fascinating, though, and offers a glimmer of positive potential, is that for adults, and particularly older adults, the picture can be quite different. While daily internet searching can alter brain responsiveness and neural circuits controlling decision-making and complex reasoning, internet use and brain-training video games can actually improve memory and fluid intelligence in older adults,
Improve memory.
potentially reducing cognitive decline and even delaying the onset of neurodegenerative diseases. This suggests the development of a unique form of online cognition in older adults,
Online cognition.
where digital tools might serve as a new platform to maintain or even exceed the typical cognitive capacities seen in a younger brain.
That's truly incredible. A potential reversal or mitigation of some of the negative effects seen in younger populations.
It suggests that while the brain adapts, it can do so in ways that are beneficial, depending on age and specific usage. But as you mentioned earlier, it's crucial to exercise prudence in manipulating these cognitive enhancement capacities.
Yeah, we need to be careful what we wish for and understand the full implications before widely recommending such interventions.
So as we synthesize all of this complex research and its implications, let's talk about the critical flags for future research and the indispensable ethical considerations that must guide us.
Neuroethics. Absolutely crucial.
Especially when we talk about what's known as the alignment problem in AI.
The alignment problem refers to the fundamental challenge of ensuring that AI's purpose and objectives truly align with human values, ethics, and well-being.
How do we make sure AI helps, not harms?
Exactly. It asks, how do we build AI that genuinely benefits humanity, rather than inadvertently causing harm or pursuing goals that might conflict with our deepest values? This raises profound questions about the ethical ramifications of neurotechnologies and advanced AI.
Like privacy of our thoughts.
Concerns around privacy of our thoughts and data, the very nature of human identity and what it means to be human in an AI-dominated world, our individual agency and autonomy, ensuring equality of access and impact,
And cognitive manipulation.
and of course the potential for sophisticated cognitive manipulation at an unprecedented scale. What's encouraging is the ongoing establishment of ethical frameworks and guidelines to promote data protection, transparency in AI algorithms, and equitable access.
It needs to go beyond just the tech stuff, right?
Absolutely. This extends beyond just the technical aspects of AI to address its broader societal repercussions, calling for a collaborative effort among neuroscientists, ethicists, policymakers, and the public.
Which brings us to the core question that has truly underpinned this entire deep dive. What is gained and what is lost as our brains navigate this rapidly digitalizing world?
It's the central question.
Our brain, as we've explored, exhibits remarkable adaptability and synaptic plasticity, constantly forging new neural connections and eliminating others based on how we use it, what we focus on, what we prioritize.
This leads us to the ultimate, most pressing question for all of us, is the digitalization of our brains, which is undoubtedly forming new neural connections and eliminating others, accentuating specific cognitive modes like quick scanning, rapid information processing, or broad interconnectedness.
At the expense of others that are equally or even vitally pertinent to human flourishing.
Are we gaining a fluid, adaptive intelligence capable of navigating vast information landscapes? But at what cost to other essential human faculties like deep reading comprehension, sustained singular attention, genuine face-to-face empathy, critical reflection, or profound contemplation?
That's the trade-off we need to understand.
The ultimate aim of all this ongoing research is to understand these gains and losses so that we can collectively harness neuroscience insights for the ethical development of AI and digital technologies that truly enhance human capacities and foster well-being, rather than inadvertently diminishing what makes us uniquely human.
And this brings us to the question of time and uncertainty. It's all happening so incredibly fast.
Almost too fast to keep up.
AI models are evolving at an unprecedented pace, faster than their deployment and certainly faster than human comprehension or our ability to anticipate the full range of their impacts. We are building the plane while flying it, often at supersonic speed.
What's particularly relevant here is how the human brain instinctively grapples with prolonged uncertainty. Our brains typically try to reduce this stress and cognitive load by shifting from flexible, hippocampus-dependent memory,
The kind for new learning.
which is involved in forming new memories and contextual learning, to more rigid, stereotyped, and less cognitively demanding habit-forming processes, often linked to the striatum.
Falling back on habits to cope with stress.
It allows us to automate responses and reduce the mental strain of constant decision-making in uncertain environments. This prompts a critical final question for our deep dive. Are we truly taking the necessary time to analyze what this rapid digitalization means for human cognition and fundamental brain function?
Or are we just caught up in the race?
Or are we primarily driven by the relentless pursuit of productivity, global competitiveness, and the sheer excitement of unlocking technological potential, potentially at the expense of our very essence as sentient, thoughtful, and deeply social human beings?
It's a question that demands deep personal reflection. The impact of digital media and AI on our brains is far from simple. It's a complex, multifaceted transformation happening at an astonishing, often overwhelming pace.
Understanding these dynamics, arming ourselves with this knowledge, empowers us to engage with technology more consciously, to make truly informed choices about how we interact with this ever-evolving digital world,
And to shape its future.
and to advocate for a future where technology serves humanity thoughtfully.
So, as we close this deep dive, consider this provocative thought. Will we, as a species, adapt and develop entirely new brain circuit arrangements, much like we did when humans first learned to read and fundamentally reorganized our brains to process written language?
A new cognitive revolution.
Will these new arrangements enable us to explore new knowledge frontiers and cognitive capacities we can barely imagine today? Or will this rapid, accelerating shift threaten our fundamental capacity to develop our own independent thoughts, to be truly creative, and to maintain the core cognitive and emotional functions that define us?
The answers are still being written.
By all of us, every single day, with every click, every scroll, and every decision we make in this digital age.